HPA Common Mark. So welcome to the HPA session to talk about remote collaboration. You find us here in Capture Studios, downtown Los Angeles. We're in front of their magnificent 40-foot wide LED wall, powered by Unreal Engine, 13 feet tall, 40 feet wide, and today we're in a jungle to have our conversation about remote collaboration. And I'm joined by Jon Walkenhorst, who is the CTO of Evercast, who's leading this transition into a remote collaboration world.
So the name is Jon Walkenhorst. I've been with Evercast since June.
Of 2020. What a time to join a company.
Yeah. The previous year, I'd been working in Europe and Germany for Juniper, working on edge cloud and edge compute. And that ended when I just didn't want to travel across the pond anymore because it looked like the virus was going to become a thing. And I ran into, at CES, a former colleague from a company that we both worked at. And she said there was this opportunity, and it turned out it was a tremendous opportunity. So when I started in June, I had roughly 7 people, and I'm now at 50 and continuing to grow because the opportunity that we've been building, all the workflows we've been bringing on is just incredible. For me, the amazing thing is it's really the culmination of all different things that we did at Technicolor. We worked on a project called Cineglass. We worked on early cloud development in a project called MGO. When I finished at Technicolor as CTO of Connected Home, we were working on Edge Cloud and ways to use CPE. And it's really, I'm bringing all of those technologies together into this organization.
Cool, I'll do my introduction. So, Mark Turner, President of Entertainment Technologies. We're a boutique consulting firm, help companies think through the intersection of technology and business and what will happen when everything changes. And as one of those things that I do, I work for the studios at Movie Labs, which is a joint venture of the major Hollywood studios, and help them write the 2030 vision for the future of production, which is based on a cloud-centric future, which you're very familiar with, but also how will the workflows change? How will the people change to be able to adapt to that? So it's about software, it's about tools, it's about cloud, and it's really about making the whole industry more efficient. So it was for IBC 2019. That's when Movie Labs released this 2030 vision paper. And it was really designed to coalesce a lot of the thoughts that had already happened in the industry. So the studios have been talking about cloud for a while. Various companies have been trying it, but there was no overall vision for where we think that all these technologies are going to converge. So that was the idea, is let's write a paper that actually put a common studio viewpoint out that everybody can shoot for. And we called it 2030, not because that was like a hard deadline that you have to get it done by 2030. We'd like to bring that forward as far as possible. It was to get away from short-term technical problems, right? So people would say, if you're trying to write a 2022 vision, people would go, I don't think 5G will have rolled out by then. I don't think the applications will be updated by then. But if you throw it out 10 years, then you give yourself enough time for the industry to think about this, develop standards, develop new software, develop new tools, and think about those people issues, about new workflows. So that's why we gave ourselves enough space. And now what we're trying to do is try and move that forward as far as possible. Who do we need to collaborate with? What companies do we need to get involved? What standards need to exist? And how do we coalesce this community of technology leaders? Now we've got a goal, can we all shoot for it together? Which I think really touches on that whole collaboration idea, because they say it takes a village to make a movie, and what we discovered this year is that the village doesn't need to be in the same place at the same time, which was a huge revelation, I think, to most people who were in productions that said, we have to be together to be able to make this stuff work. And now they've realized that, maybe we don't. Or not everybody, or not everybody at the same time in the same place, which I think has been the really fascinating thing from last year. So Jon, let's talk a bit about remote collaboration. Define what it means for you, and if you can give me some examples of Evercast, like who's doing remote collaboration sessions right now, what are they using it for?
So I would say the original use case for Evercast was what we call creative editorial. Okay. So you'd have your the editorial team, be it the director or the first and second editors, bringing in the content, aligning it, and then hopping into a room and being able to approve, or I like this shot, I like that shot, I like stitching it together here. It's really about creating that first version or second version of the actual finished product, and then from there it's taken off. We have use cases where we're able to do on set. I suspect if we were looking over at to my left, your right, there's an Evercast session running with a remote wannabe director telling us what to be doing, and that's a really amazing capability for us. It's not just sitting around and looking at pre-recorded content. We can do it live.
Right.
We have use cases around ADR and audio dubbing. We have use cases that successfully doing loop groups, so you can bring in the backgrounds. There's a lot of use cases that where it's being utilized or being planned to be utilized, because every one of us looks at what our collaboration tools or our workflows, and we find that it's very flexible with the different types of capture cards and the different types of computers. And we have multi-region. We're in AWS exclusively today, but we have users in APAC and East Coast, and they're joining an Evercast room, and it works. The latency is tolerable.
And you talk at Evercast about rooms, and I remember talking to Marcy about this, and what I loved about it was the idea, she was like, it's my room, and it's like my office. And it's always there, and it's open, and people can knock on the door and come in. So it is virtual collaboration, but it feels like the same sort of persistence that we have if we're in an office. I know how to reach you, I can come around and knock on the door and we can have a conversation. Just jump in, we don't have to book it, we don't have to go through a whole scheduling system for a conferencing room. Just knock on the door and sort of come on and in. And you might find that there's other people in there having a conversation already, and they're actually quite an interesting thing, and other people can jump in and provide their inputs. I would try pointing out to people that the vision is not about $100 million blockbuster movies. Because to a certain extent, they've got a lot of resource and they can hack things to make them work. The idea is that, much like innovation that happens in a Mercedes S-Class, eventually it trickles down. Reverse cameras used to be available only in a Mercedes S-Class, right, in the 80s. And now we're trickling down to every car, budget level car can have a reverse mirror. That's the same vision here, which is if we can take really high-end productions with large budgets and standardize a lot of the tools that they're using, that will ripple down.
It will.
Those will move their way down through different types of TV production, and we should get down to the point where these software-based workflows are the standard in student films and YouTube videos and everyone else. They don't necessarily have the collaboration problem that a movie's got with 5,000 people on it, and the pressure of $100 million worth of advertising about to show, about to hit the market for your show that better damn be ready by the date it's gonna be. Yeah. But they still have their own problems, and they might be collaborating across 3 people, but those 3 people are in different places around the world, and you've got the same issue. And if you look at every corporate, every Fortune 500 company now is effectively a media company, because they're creating media, internal media, they're creating stuff for their own campaigns. Individual people are doing training videos that they're posting on their own LinkedIn. Support groups are doing it. Like, video is the new media.
So today at Evercast, we aren't just in Hollywood. We are in advertising. We are in influencers. We are in UGC, and all of these new emerging content creators and talent and influence of all of these capabilities. And yet we want to get into ADR, and we want to get into loop groups, and we want to get into these additional workflows that we're being asked to do. And we cannot innovate. I cannot hire people fast enough and innovate fast enough to all the workflows that we're being asked to onboard, just in 2021 alone. But there are some universal challenges, and one of those is timecode. And you'd think every camera should be synchronized to some time server somewhere, but they're not.
Right.
And so sometimes I would have to re-ingest a file to know exactly how to timecode that. And if I want to start syncing files, I want to start accessing all of the various media asset managers or data repositories out there, I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Right. That to me is collaboration, as opposed to video conferencing, which is like, we're all going to sit and for hours on end listening to one or two people rambling on and throwing up a whiteboard. And the other thing you picked up on there, which I think is really interesting, is these are video industry specific problems. So how do you wire in a camera into a high-end collaboration system without losing quality, without losing fidelity? Because the other thing that, you're running over the internet. The internet's an unpredictable beast. And what doesn't work in our industry is streaming issues, buffering, drop frames. When you're doing a QC run, even if you're doing editing or you're doing color, you're looking at anything with a high level of precision in our industry, and you see drop frames caused by some codec. The initial reaction from an executive will be, was something wrong? Is it wrong from the internet that's streaming it to me, or is the source material wrong somehow? And pretty much the only solution is rewind and go back and play the piece again and go, oh, was there a drop frame really in the source material, or was it in some sort of internet buffer? So taking web technologies and just saying we're just gonna use a video conferencing service for our collaboration with its inherent shortcuts that it takes to get stuff to work when you're trying to get an entire world online is very different from the problems that we have in our industry, where we say, I've got a particularly weird camera format that I need to plug in, or I've got a audio file which is non-standard that I need to get through the internet to these other people on the other end. And I think that's where, how many of your people are working on that level of integration between the technical world we have and the internet, and brokering the two of those things together? I
would actually bring in, and that's a good point, but I would bring in, there's actually a third player here, and that is the hardware and the operating system manufacturers. Uh-huh. So if I choose an output and a Windows on Chrome on Windows, I'm going to have a completely different experience than Chrome on a Mac. Or if I run on our Apple TV client or our iPad client, it's not just what's in, what comes out. It's also what you display it on. And I've got an entire team working just on future productions and trying to get color fidelity. And I simplify it down into fidelity because it's a lot of different pieces. But if I know what's coming in and I know what's coming out, if I can control both ends, I'm in this unique position that I can correct inbound and I can correct outbound.
Right. So
that I don't have to worry about how Microsoft's internal browsers are going to render it, or when we release our native client for Windows and Mac in the coming weeks, I now have more control, and that's just video. What about audio? The Mac OS changes and splits up 5.1, different than the way you'd spend it, the way it would be heard on an Apple TV versus what's heard on a Windows machine. Mm-hmm. So. And you have audio ambisonic, so if I put on a set of headphones, I can get 7.1, and I can integrate different tools to make that happen. Or how do I integrate from my Mac straight into a home receiver system where I can do 7.1? These are all things that are pushing us to tackle and deliver. But I have an entire team focused just in R&D on controlling and being sure that if there isn't a standard, we're going to try and focus on one, just if you use us to start with.
Right.
So that we'll have the capability. And then I don't want to just limit this conversation of collaboration around video. The way we approached the video conferencing is different than, say, the more mainstream commodities, the Zooms and the WebExes of the world.
Right.
And it requires a much different broadband connection in the home. And that is when most users sitting in their home and they sign up for the broadband connection, they say, I'm paying for 100 meg down and 5 meg up. That's a shared service. I don't care who you're paying it from, that's a shared service.
Right.
So we've spent some time educating our clients, our users, spend a few extra dollars and get your business class service. Because it's a more guaranteed.
Because the contention is lower. It's still contended, but it's lower than.
And there's SLAs.
Right.
So you get a 50% upload instead of a 5% upload of your download speeds.
Right.
So that, and you really called that out appropriately in the 2030 paper. Regardless of what GPU capability you get into, remote collaboration is only going to be as good as that last mile, that broadband connection.
Right.
And whether users go back into the offices or whether they're VPN to their offices, they're still at home. Broadband is that unknown quantity that still is going to have to be solved, and not everyone's going to have a synchronous fiber into their home. It'd be nice if we did, but the economics and the broadband side don't work.
Yeah, I mean, bandwidth is like building lanes on the 405. We'll never have enough, right? We'll upgrade, we'll get gigabit at home, and then we'll have 8K, 12-bit video, and we're going to work our way through it. We're going to have VR type services, and we're just going to run out of bandwidth. You can never have enough bandwidth because we'll always find a use for it. We'll always just have to be more efficient with it. So bandwidth's a persistent problem. We'll just have to keep improving quality as we go. One of the other things you touched on, and this was bad enough. I used to do HDR stuff at Technicolor, as you recall. And in the early days, we used to have problems in the room, in a color grading session, just getting the monitors calibrated with the local equipment. One of the issues that we've identified in this whole notion of remote desktops and how we move into a cloud-based infrastructure is, how am I going to be able to understand what the monitor is at the far end that someone's going to be watching on? And as you said, one of the challenges is, I'm going to have 5 people watching. One of them might be on an iPad, one might be on an Apple TV connected to a consumer TV with or without a high dynamic range signal or a different color space. Someone might be using a computer monitor separately connected to a machine. Someone might be using a laptop that's baked in, and someone could be using an iPad where I've got a calibrated display attached to my GPU. And for every single one of those scenarios, I'm going to throw a variety of different signals at it, some with metadata that describes the highlights and the low points, a Dolby Vision type thing, or a Technicolor HDR system. That metadata is vital. If you don't have it, all of those displays are going to look wrong. Or worse, all of my 5 people watching it are going to see a different version. And one's going to be saying it's looking too green, one's going to be saying it's looking too magenta, and unless we can find some way of standardizing all those signals so that I at least know it's as good as the display is on each one of those machines, how are we going to do something like color critical decisions without pulling people back to a single place? We could try and standardize and say you all have to use an iPad Pro of this generation, because at least then I can predict what color space they're all in. But that's restricting the industry, and we're trying to avoid restricting things with technology. We're trying to be creative people that will work wherever we can. And it's not about work from home, it's work from anywhere. And if the only device I have right now is a 5-year-old laptop, I want to be able to work on a 5-year-old laptop. Don't tell me I have to have this particular device or I can't get into a production. It's not going to work. So how do you see that? How do we resolve this, where it's hard enough in a local environment, and now we've thrown the internet and the random world of devices out there as well?
I don't know I don't know that it's possible to correct for all of those variables. So I think you're going to have to, at least our approach is going to be, you're going to determine who the VIP users are, and you'll know what their display is, and you'll be able to adjust for that. The rest of it is the collaboration is going to be more about what's in the content than the color of the content or the audio of the content. But when it gets into color grading and final color analysis, it'll be a much more controlled environment, and you will be limited to a certain hardware set. Otherwise, you'll be living in the world of subjectivity forever.
Right. Yeah, and I wonder how many people are watching an edit and distracted by bad color or bad audio quality, or thinking that there's something wrong with the source material.
And that's a problem, because, sorry to interrupt you, but you think what is the tool that we're all using, and I don't want to see Evercast get the blame for those types of environments. So we need to take the time to enlighten people and say, in this particular shot, you need this if you want optimal, but you still can continue to be part of the session.
Right. But and that's one of you can get a long way by just notifying people. The signal is this, right? It's a 10-bit HDR P3 master. And at least tell them what you're watching, however, is a 2K 8-bit Rec 709 version of that signal. So at least people know that they're not looking at the source material at its highest level. So you touched on security. Let's talk about a bit about security, because of course, the cloud, the internet, for years was the source of all piracy, and everybody in Hollywood was like, oh, piracy bad, piracy equal internet, internet equal bad, therefore we should not put any unreleased content anywhere near the internet. And then I think what was really fascinating about the Movie Labs paper when it came out was you had the CTOs of all the studios getting together and go, no, the cloud is our future. That's where we expect all this production to be in
2020,
years.
But it wasn't in 2014, 2015.
No.
So
we've gone through this migration where now cloud, if done right, is suddenly safe. But you're still pushing bits out through the internet. You're taking unreleased content, visual effects artists, you've got editors, you've got people working on very high value content, and you're pushing out through the public internet. So how are you protecting those assets on the Evercast platform to make sure that someone can know, these shots aren't going to get scraped, they're not going to get pulled out from someone's internet connection, I'm not on an unsecured connection in an airport somewhere and someone's picking up my Wi-Fi links. Like, how do you protect the content when you're running over the public internet?
So let's start by saying a motivated actor is always going to find a way to do nefarious things. But if we look at the basic architecture and our approach to how we allow collaboration, we don't have original content on our platform.
Okay.
We don't subscribe to the data gravity model that you talk about in the 2030. It's not wrong, it's not right. That's just not the way we approach it from a security perspective. We allow and presume that the director or the room owner has already been blessed and allowed to have that content by the content owner.
Okay.
So we come from that basic supposition. And then we allow that room owner to determine who gets to participate. And we secure that by setting up secured rooms, and you can only get in if you're an authorized client, and you can only access the stream if you are on the platform and you are logged in and it's encrypted at rest or encrypted at transmit of the stream itself. But it is never the original raw content. It's just
a stream. Right.
So I don't have to worry about putting original content in the cloud. I don't have to spend a lot of time working with the CSOs of the different studios and convincing them that we have all the latest, greatest bells and whistles and security of your original content, your $1 billion worth of content. We allow you to stream it from inside your network, inside your corporate firewalls, and then you have outside users who are able to access it without having to enter your security or enter your trusted zones.
Right. Perimeter security. Yeah. There's a new Movie Labs paper about the security architecture, which goes into a lot more detail about this idea of effectively that, which is I can't just do perimeter security anymore around a post-production facility and say the files are in this building, and as long as I put a shield around this particular building, that's my attack zone, and if I protect that, everything that goes on within it is kind of fine. Because now we're talking about using public infrastructure, we're talking about using clouds, we're talking about sharing files in multiple different infrastructures with multiple different levels of security and people controlling them. So now we need to throw a security perimeter around the workflow itself, the tasks in it, the people in it, the assets in it. They all need to be authenticated and authorized every single time they try touching stuff, and that includes a link. So at that point, you would know who is the user who is requesting access to this asset. Are they authorized? Do they have permission? And you give the minimum level of permissions. So I might be attached to a production, but I might be in payroll. That does not mean I should get access to the dailies. Correct. I don't need access to the dailies. You should not give access to the wrong people. So, that's an example of taking these sort of 2030 principles, which were very theoretical and high level, and now dealing them down into actual architectures that people could take off and start implementing in different applications and cloud instances. And I think that's when things really get interesting, right? Is how we can take this stuff and make it real. Okay, so we talked about security. So let's talk about COVID. There was obviously this pandemic thing. I read about it somewhere in the newspaper. And we were allowed to take our masks off to be able to talk to each other as long as we're far enough away.
6 feet.
So that's obviously had a huge impact. What do you think the future is? I mean, we're all expected to be vaccinated in the US at least at some point this year, apparently. Does that mean everybody just gets vaccinated and goes back to normal next year? And this was just a blip for 2 years and otherwise we're normal?
I think it'll be hard to put the genie back in the box. I think the concept of working from home in shorts, as long as everything above the waistline is business casual. I think the idea of getting to know your family, and it's been a tremendous opportunity to rebalance the work life. So I don't think that we will go anywhere near where we were. Now, there will always be security requirements where you'll have to be on-prem or you'll have to be in the old business models or workflows. But one of the really cool things about Evercast is we're completely virtual. The company itself has a couple offices in Scottsdale, but my entire development team does not work in that office. They're global. I've got developers all over. So we run 12, 13 different time zones. Now, we make a requirement that you need to work US hours so that we can all begin to collaborate. But we've been successful in not having a corporate infrastructure. I don't have an internal network. I don't have any IT services. I have some tech ops people who do my IT for me. And I think that has shown that, at least for us, and it's been a real challenge from the studios trying to get them to believe that I don't have an internal network. I don't process your data anywhere on my internal network. So I don't need to be applicable or to follow your internal security controls about putting intrusion detection on my network. I just don't have a network.
Right.
But the reason I say that is collaboration and content creation, regardless of it's whether a tentpole or it is an influencer, is going to continue to be virtual. It just is. I don't think we'll ever go back. So COVID has shown us how it can be done successfully, how it can be done financially, and it's allowed us to be human again. In 2013, when I started, I just left the cloud-based streaming retailer called MGO. And then went to work on this product called Cineglass. We were putting together what is the genesis of what we're talking about today. We were bringing in network consultants, and we were bringing in clients and software developers, and we put the vision together that is largely driving what we do at Evercast today. But the challenge wasn't technological; it was social.
Right.
Management hadn't quite wrapped their head around the fact that we could go virtual and we could separate. And one of the early workflows we were working on was trying to find a way to digitize the on-set content that's being created. And back then they were putting on DLT tapes, and they were shipping it across the world. And every day FedEx would drop back up with truckfuls of tapes, and we would load them in and we'd put them on our internal storage. But there was a little earthquake that shut down Japan and killed the digital tapes. And that forced all productions to move into taking your production to a local internet
hard
site,
drive instead of a tape.
or in this case, they started uploading it shortly after that. So this concept of force majeure isn't really well understood, but it is the multiplier that forces technology change, especially in entrenched or incumbent technology. So for us to be in the right place at the right time with the right product, fortuitous or whatever you describe luck as, it really was another force majeure that really opened up the door and changed the way they looked at things. And if we look forward, and maybe that's another conversation for later, what's it going to look like in 22, 23 in this virtualized collaboration? But from a technological, and we already knew how to build cloud native technologies. We already knew how to do all these different things. But the question is it data gravity, which you described, but I use a slightly different term, where I have the data and I bring the compute to the data and I bring the users to the data. Mm-hmm. Or is it going to be some hybridization where maybe I keep the data local, but I find ways to use the compute and I find ways to stream it, and that's the approach we bring to the market.
So, but of course, for you guys, COVID was probably a curse and a great opportunity at the same time, right? All of a sudden, you had the world coming into your door and saying, "I need to be able to work remotely, get me up online," but you're also building out the platforms. How did that work? Talk us through the COVID situation from Evercast.
So I don't think anyone realized in the beginning of 2020 that if every company, every startup, or is some form of the hockey stick, I don't think anyone realized how close they were to the inflection point. As I mentioned early on, we were double-digit clients in early 2020, and one of the papers I recently wrote is this concept of how you go from nothing, or you go from what was a small linear trajectory to really rapid, explosive, blitz-style growth. And all companies along the way know they're picking up technical debt. I know I make this decision to get to this product to market faster, or to solve for this client, I'm going to take on the technical debt. The challenge that Evercast had was being in the right place at the right time, was that the explosive growth made it top heavy. We were adding AWS instances and more and more and more of them, but the normal flow of addressing your technical debt as you grow was gone.
Right.
So they hit a huge growth in the first half of the year, and then just after I joined, we plateaued. We couldn't grow faster. I couldn't get more infrastructure. So I had to stop. I stopped doing software deployments. I stopped doing new features. And we went back and rebuilt the UX that we have today, which we call version 3. And I wanted to kind of touch that for a second. So we still have version 2 and version 3, because clients or projects or shows that started in version 2, you don't want to change in midstream. Like in visual effects, you don't want to change out your
everybody knows how it's working. You don't want to just say,
you don't want to change your Maya in midstream, right?
We're going to push it out to every client at the same time, right?
So we're going to maintain both of these for a while, and I run them in 2 separate clusters, and they have the same database and same account, but you don't want to force the creative communities to adopt new technology. Whereas modern SaaS the tech giants, we're going to release a new version. It looks nothing like the old one, and I forced you to do it. Yeah. But we look at it as we're a SaaS and we're a workflow company, but we are blended, we are woven into your workflow, such that I can't just change a new feature, I can't change the look and feel of a button, or change it and not have it have direct impact to your show. So we have to maintain both.
As we look forward now, what do you think is the biggest hurdle in this world of remote collaboration in professional media?
That's fairly an easy conversation for me, and that is, it's not going to be about technology. It's not going to be about architecture. It's not going to be about cloud native. It's going to be partially about bandwidth, but mostly it's going to be about the social engineering of adoption of the virtualization of the workflows. We saw early days, they didn't want to adopt the virtualization or the digitization of the video conference, or the video being content, or they didn't really want to leave the office. They didn't want to go home. That took outside influence to make that happen. I think as long as we require outside influence to adopt new technology, we will always be many years behind where we should be, and where the visionaries are out creating new content, or creating new tools and technologies.
Okay, I'll give you mine. I think our single biggest challenge is getting our industry to act like one community and jointly fix some of these problems. There's too many silos that we've formed over the years. You know, there's a silo around post-production vendors. There's a silo around visual effects. There's silos around certain software stacks, or even certain cloud vendors saying that these things have to work in this way, and only in these types of environments. And what we need to do if we're all going to grow this industry is to cut across all of those. And we really need to find a way of enabling a truly software-defined workflow that cuts all the way across all those different application stacks. And if we can do that, we'd unleash a ton of innovation, a huge amount of opportunity for companies. But if we keep trying to fix everything by each little company trying to do their own part, we're just going to end up with what we had when we went from analog to digital. You know, we went from shooting on film canisters and shipping them around the world to shooting on hard drives and then shipping those around the world. And this is our opportunity to reinvent the way we make content and embrace, you know, an almost infinite amount of compute and storage that's out there in the world now, and actually rethink the way that we can drive content into the world. And COVID, we might look back in 20 years and say this was actually a pivotal moment. Well, Jon, thank you for joining me in the jungle for our conversation about remote collaboration in person. It's been great to have you. It's been great to catch up and have a chat about where the future lies.
Looking forward to doing it again next year.
In person.
In person.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.